The BMW M340i is everyone's go-to sports sedan. It's the benchmark. It's the one that everyone seems to want in this segment for a variety of reasons. And in this video, I'm going to try and figure out if it's worth the hype and specifically talk about how this 2020 xDrive version of the M340i drives. I'll also cover the interior, talk about the fuel economy you can expect, and also the pricing and how it compares to the competition these days. And huge thanks to Harrison Auto Sales and Service for providing me here with this M340i to review for you guys today. So about the M340i here, well, this is a 2020 model, which was the first model year for the M340i's. And of course, they get a big performance improvement over a regular 330, with this getting the inline-six B58 engine, the legendary BMW engine everyone loves is right here under the hood. It sounds great, it performs great, as you'll see here in a few minutes once we hit our back road. But as far as the exterior, it's also, you know, a little bit different. You have a unique front bumper there. The grille is unique, and you will see the silverish, goldish kind of accents you have there for the grille, with the active grille shutters you have now on these for better efficiency. And, you know, it's a nice look, especially this one in this blue color. It's really a fantastic metallic blue and looks great. You also, coming down to the sides here, have some sportier 18-inch wheels, which is actually kind of reasonable. I think you could also get 19s on these if you'd like, but these 18s are great and probably will give you a slightly better ride too. You also will see you have more of that goldish silver finish here on the mirror caps, and then going out to the back, you also see it on the M340i badge, as well as, you know, a unique rear bumper there with the unique exhaust tips. And that's about it though. There's really not a whole lot else to differentiate this from a regular 3 Series. Now it is slightly lower. For the rear-wheel drive versions, it's 0.4 inches lower than a 330i, and then if you do the all-wheel drive version like this, it's only 0.1 inch lower than a regular 330. And the 330 also, with the sport package, could get that same slightly lower suspension. But those are really the only ways you can tell the difference. It definitely flies under the radar. It's kind of similar to the Audi S4 in that regard, which I reviewed not too long ago as well. But I think it's still a really classy look. It has aged very well, especially in these days of gigantic BMW grills and really out there styling from modern BMWs. I think this is a high point in BMW styling history. I think these still really look good here even 4 years later. The interior of the M340i is pretty nice for the most part, and obviously is going to be very, very similar to a regular 3 Series, which is also still very nice. But there are a couple unique touches here, like this steering wheel, which is thicker with huge 10 and 2 notches here, and the bigger paddle shifters, and the M badge. This one is also heated, which was an extra cost option, but it's nice you have that. You also have these seats, which I think these are still like the lower grade seats, because this, I think, just feels like the synthetic leather. You know, it feels okay, but it's, to me, not as nice feeling as the real leather. But they do have adjustable bolstering, which is something I always appreciate. You can have them get nice and tight if you'd like, and all the other usual adjustments on these seats. And they're still really nice. I just wish they were perforated so they breathe a little bit better in the summer here. But otherwise, you know, you have the adjustable thigh support, and overall still really comfortable seats. They're also heated. I don't believe there's a way to get cooled seats back in 2020 for these, but you have the heating at least, which is nice. And then also the gauge cluster here is the same cluster you get in a regular 3 Series if you opt for these higher packaged versions. Because you could get a smaller gauge cluster in the 3 Series, I believe, but for these, you get the 12.3 inch cluster in most of these, and it's a really nice look to it. Very high resolution, and has a little bit of customization to it. Not a ton, but still really great gauges in my opinion. And this one also has the optional head-up display, which, you know, is your typical head-up display, but is nice if that's something that you like. Coming over to the middle here, you get a 10.3 inch touchscreen, and it's great to still have the touchscreen, but also to still have the controller wheel. So it has exactly, you know, whatever you want to do, you can do it here regardless of what your preference is. It also does have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and it's really quick and snappy for all of the menus here for this BMW system. It really has aged well. Even 4 years later here, it's just as fast as the fastest systems out there for most other brands in new cars these days. You know, it does all the basics fairly well. It has the satellite radio and, you know, navigation, all that kind of stuff. And it's a nice size screen. It's nicely integrated into the dash too, which I appreciate, versus a lot of these other huge tacked on things you have these days. And even with brand new 3 Series for 2024 and stuff, you know, you have just this giant panel of screens, and, you know, it doesn't feel quite as incorporated as they do in these. So I think this was actually a really sweet spot in BMW history as far as having the tech, but still having, you know, the traditional look, I guess you could say. But coming down, you do have still a row of climate controls here, something again you don't get anymore. And great, you have those here, and you even have some metal on some of the buttons, and another row of buttons beneath that, which are all customizable. It's one of the cool, unique things here about these BMWs is, 8 different buttons to customize to whatever you want them to do. Nice little shortcuts, and then a little volume knob here as well. There are also a few more buttons down here by the shifter. But as far as storage space goes in the 3 Series, it's pretty good. You have a nice sized pocket in the door here with a nice bottle holder cutout. You have 2 cup holders here in the middle and another little spot for your phone in front of it. And then there's this center armrest which opens up, and you have a decent amount of space in there, as well as a USB-C jack. They're ahead of the curve on that too. You'll see a regular USB-A and power outlet by those cup holders. And then moving on to the back seat here, it's, I'd say, slightly larger than some of the other competitors for their back seat. It's still not a huge amount of space though, but I'm 5'9", me sitting behind myself. I can fit back there totally comfortably, have a decent amount of headroom as well. And also we'll see a full down center armrest with 2 cup holders and pockets in those doors as well. The trunk is also, I'd say, slightly larger than most of the other competitors, and so it's very nice and wide, pretty nice and deep as well. And shouldn't be anything out of the ordinary. If you're looking at luxury sports sedans, this will be right in line with your expectations, I think. But overall, it's a pretty nice interior. Now, a couple little critiques I do have to say are that, you have some hard plastic down by your knees here, which isn't great if you're resting your knee up against the side of this on long trips. You're not going to want to do that. And, some of the more plush competitors do have some padding here, which is great. Also, like this cover for the cup holders feels a little cheap. And, you can see like the engine start button here is starting to wear a little bit. So, there's some nice parts to these interiors, but I'd say there's some other parts that haven't aged super well, even though this vehicle only has about 42,000 miles on it. But overall, still pretty nice interior. I like a little bit of ambient lighting you have on the doors and stuff, but overall, it's still a pretty nice place to spend time. But let's start up and go for a drive. The 3 Series here for the M340i, you get the M key, which is a cool key. Nice and small, pretty thin too. I always really like these keys, but of course it is keyless access, keyless entry, and push button start. So you just leave the key in your pocket, hit the engine start button, and it starts right up. And it has actually a loud startup on the outside, louder than I was expecting. Alright, so setting off here in the M340i. So the first thing you notice about these, I think the first thing that I'm noticing is that even though it sounds loud on the outside, on the inside here, in comfort mode at least, it's really nice and smooth and quiet. And this P58 motor is just an amazingly smooth engine as well. And so, it gives you buttery smooth power delivery and just feels really nice. Also, as we're coming up to a stop sign here, brakes feel nice and good as well. You have some larger M Sport brakes here, of course, and they're 13.7-inch rotors, I believe, in the front. 4-piston calipers give you some nice extra braking power there. Other things, visibility is also very good here in the 3 Series. The dashboard comes down nice and low. A-pillars are a little on the thick side, but not too bad, honestly, and you have a pretty good view out of the back as well. Another thing to notice, so we're on this little bit of a bumpy park road, and you feel the bumps a little more than a regular 3 Series, even with this one only having the 18-inch wheels. The 19s, I'm sure, would be a little firmer. And that is one critique I've heard about these, is that they can be a little bit firm, especially for the all-wheel drive version. Strangely enough, the rear-wheel drive version seems like it's a little more supple. And so, but for all M Sport, M340i versions here, you do have 20% stiffer springs, and you also have some thicker anti-roll bars there to give you the sporty handling you're expecting. But, it's a little bit of a firmer ride, and I'm noticing, compared to like the S4 that I reviewed on these same roads just a couple of months ago, this is definitely a little bit stiffer for sure. If you're going into this as an enthusiast, it's not going to be a deal breaker, I don't think. I will continue to test it here on more roads that are a little rougher, but so far it hasn't actively annoyed me. It's just like, I'm feeling a little bit more here than I do in most of the competitors. I'd still say this is probably a little bit more forgiving than a Mercedes C43 though. If you are cross-shopping, all this, sports sedan competitors here, to me, those were even a little too stiff. I think this is okay and not too bad. You also can get adaptive dampers on these as an option. This one does not have that option. Both those, of course, you're able to smooth things up a little bit, but from what I've read, that also doesn't transform it either. And so just be prepared that, this is going to be, I'd say, a little stiffer than an S4. Another thing I'm noticing right off the bat is that even in comfort mode here, steering is a little heftier than a regular 3 Series, that's for sure. Now, it's, again, not overboard, but it's just exactly what you're expecting expecting out of an M340i, I think, and does feel really good. Although still not a ton of feel through the steering. That's another thing, you know, people have complained about. And to me, it's fine. You know, if you're used to electric power steering these days, you know, it's not going to really raise any red flags or anything. But, you know, I'd say that, you know, it's not the most communicative steering, but still feels totally fine to me. And, yeah, this motor also feels so good. It's so smooth with this transmission too. You have a ZF 8-speed automatic, which is basically the best automatic in the industry, I'd say. And it is just, you know, it's a torque converter. It's just normal. It does what you're expecting it to do. It seems pretty well programmed so far. And overall, if you are just wanting to cruise around in comfort mode here, you know, it's not going to be loud and boisterous. You just have a little bit of a firmer ride, but otherwise, you just cruise around in comfort and in style. But I'm going to go ahead and put it up into the sport driving mode. I'm also going to go down and put the transmission into its sport mode that it has here. And let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. And here we go. Wow. It's really quick, and I like those little burps on the upshift. Man, yeah, this thing is punchy. It is so punchy. So you have a 3-liter inline-6 turbocharged engine here, the B58, of course, legendary motor. And in this application, it has 382 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque. And as far as 0 to 60 times, I think BMW officially claimed something around 4 seconds. But they do say that for the xDrive version, it is 0.3 seconds quicker. And Car and Driver tested a rear-wheel drive version of these and got 3.8 seconds. So if that timing, you know, means you have a 3.5 seconds 0 to 60 in these, I believe it. Might sound a little optimistic. I'd say high 3s though probably is very appropriate. And I didn't even do a launch. That would be with launch control going. I was just doing a, you know, rolling acceleration there. But I mean, it's really fast. And I mean, it just it just accelerates with no hesitation, no issue. It's always right there where you want it to be too. And you can hear it's quiet here. Maybe I'll try putting the window down. Yeah, you can hear there's crackles and pops, which is what I love about this engine, is the crackles and the pops. And also with the window down, I was hearing a little bit of a turbo whistle. But yeah, so even in automatic mode, it feels really good. But let's try it out in manual mode next. And a couple quick manual shifts here before we catch up to traffic. Yeah, it's instant. Downshifts are good. It's totally good. I mean, maybe it's not quite as super sharp as, you know, a really good dual clutch from some of the top companies, but it's still totally good. We'll be able to keep up with you, no problem. And also better manual shifting than I'd say most of the other competitors offer. So yeah, absolutely fantastic. This is so far definitely the most fun experience as far as all these sports sedans goes, because it has definitely the loudest exhaust of the bunch, hands down the best sounding one, I will say, too. Pretty easily wins that comparison in my mind. And I think the aggressiveness with which this pulls is also a little more intense than some of the others. Even though like Audi Q50 Red Sport 400 has more horsepower on paper, it's hooked up to a 7-speed auto that's a lot slushier, and it's not as intense with the way it's tuned compared to this. This is really, I mean, it can be pretty intense too, because especially in manual mode here when it's holding onto those gears, I mean, it is really a good feeling package here. But let's go ditch the traffic and find some more back roads to push it a little more. All right, back to some more corners. Coming down to a nice tight one, a little harder on the brakes. They feel pretty good. I wish there was a little more bite out of them, but all right, so moved around a little bit on that little corner, trying to accelerate out. So part of the reason why is they don't get a ton of grip in these. I was kind of surprised. So at least on the 18-inch wheel package here, it's 225s in the front and 225s in the rear. Now, I believe rear-wheel drive versions bumped you up to 255s in the rear, and maybe the 19s do as well, but these 18s, 225s with this much power is going to make this actually, you know, a little bit of a handful. Thankfully, you have an electronic locking limited slip differential there in the back, and that's going to help you putting the power down. And the all-wheel drive, of course, will help too. But I mean, it was, looser than I was expecting. I mean, we used to have these Pirelli all season too. They're not even anything sporty. I believe the 19s did upgrade you to the Michelin Pilot Sport 4S summer tire. That's the way to go if you want to have a lot more grip. Just these regular all seasons, it's going to be the looser amount of grip. Now, that's okay if you like that looser feeling. Some people do. It certainly adds more drama and excitement. Instead of the grip and go, you have to kind of dance around with, the level of grip that you have. But, it's just kind of surprising that they kept the tires so narrow. I will say the one upside of that is when it comes time to change the tires, it's going to be a little bit more affordable since they're pretty skinny, and that also should help with its wintertime driving as well, because you're going to have, a little bit of a skinnier tire to slice through the snow with. But I was surprised. I was like, wow, they only put 225s on these? Like, that's pretty surprising. But other things to note here about this, well, it still handles really nice and flatly, of course, with everything being stiffer. But I mean, now with these roads being a little more bumpier and more undulations and stuff, I'm getting bounced around in my seat a little bit more here. So yeah, I can see what people are saying whenever they're complaining about the ride. It's not going to be for everyone, I'd say. If you're shopping in this segment, you're used to a luxury car ride. This might, depending on the kind of roads you have around you and stuff, this might not be what you're looking for from a nice, comfy daily driver that also happens to have a bunch of power. I'd say, again, maybe try a rear-wheel drive one, try one with adaptive dampers, kind of do a little bit of test driving of your own to see if there's something that can maybe get to a close enough happy medium for you. But it's okay. I think personally, yeah, if I wanted something a little more luxurious that also went really quickly and was really nice on the inside and all that, the Audi S4, I think is still one of my favorites in this segment, especially when you're talking about the German competitors, and I'll talk more about other competitors in a couple of minutes. But other things here to note is that curb weight is actually pretty reasonable, I would say. These are under 4,000 pounds, weighing in at 39.68. You could save 155 pounds if you went for rear-wheel drive, by the way, as well. The all-wheel drive was a $2,000 option, too. It's interesting to note. But, yeah, I mean, it just comes down to how badly you need the all-wheel drive there. But like Car and Driver, their long-term M340i was rear-wheel drive, and they survived through multiple Michigan winters with just snow tires on the rear-wheel drive version, because again, you do have that ELSD in the back to really help with that power delivery as well. But that'll come down to your personal preference and what you're comfortable with. But otherwise, I'd say that even in Sport Plus mode here, I really like that the transmission is smart enough to calm down and relax even in this sport setting for the transmission as well, whenever I'm not trying to fly around. But then, I mean, it's pretty much right there. It's a split-second delay, and then it just goes ham whenever you put your foot down to the floor. So it sounds so good. I'm going to see if I can get a little more noise with this window down again. Back to manual mode here. You do hear the turbo. I love that you hear the turbo, and it feels so good with that boost when it ramps up. And yeah, this motor, I love this motor in the Supra. I've been singing its praises for years, and now finally trying it out in the BMW here. Didn't let me down, and those crackles are so good. Yeah, it is impressive. It really is impressive. I will say though, I don't know, 3.5 seconds here to 60 sounds a little optimistic. This feels fast, but based on just how fast I was reading it to me doesn't feel, there's more crackles, quite that fast, but it is certainly very quick. And I'd say it is certainly faster feeling than most of the other main competitors, but it just feels really composed too. And these like higher speed sweepers and stuff, it just eats it up all day. And yeah, right around $3,000, just crackles and pops all day. I love it. Yeah, I can see how this is the most fun for sure. If you can put up with the ride, hands down, I can now see why the M340i gets all the hype and all the love, and it's the #1 pick whenever everyone's talking about luxury sports sedans. There's really not much downside outside of the ride. Now, these do consume oil every once in a while. And Car and Driver, in their 40,000 mile test, they had to add a quart of oil roughly every like 10,000 miles. It was like 4 times within 40,000 miles they had to add a quart of oil. So you just have to keep an eye out for oil consumption. Thankfully, the car has an e-dipstick, so it can let you know whenever it's low on oil and tell you to fill it up with oil, which is certainly nice. You don't have to be popping the hood all the time. But just beware that, you know, BMW says that is normal oil consumption. At least that's what they told Car and Driver. So a little bit more oil thirsty than the average motor, I would say. Just, you know, something to keep in mind. As far as fuel economy goes, these are rated at 22 mpg in the city, 30 on the highway, and 25 combined. And it sounds like most people actually on the highway see low to mid 30s. So it's a very efficient motor for being as powerful as it is, and most likely being underrated at that 382 horsepower mark. You know, I think you actually could probably expect slightly better efficiency than what this is saying it should do. And so a nice little extra perk here of the M340i, and does potentially make it a little more fuel efficient than some of the other more thirstier competitors. But the last thing to really mention here is the pricing and how it compares to the competition. So as far as pricing goes, this one at Harrison Auto Sales is available, by the way, if you're watching this in the first few weeks of me posting this. This one is basically exactly $40,000, and this one has just a little over 42,000 miles on it. And so that's a really nice thing, because like this one, for example, the MSRP was almost $60,000. You save 20 grand just waiting a few years. You know, it's definitely, I think, a better buy used than new, even though, again, it's a phenomenal car new as well. But, you know, used especially, you get some nice savings there. And so, you know, if you want one with higher miles, you can even get these down in like the mid 30s, mid to high 30s. But, you know, I'd say for a nice one like this, you know, about 40 grand is where you're going to be landing. And so, you know, most of the competitors are a little cheaper. That is the thing. You're paying a premium for the M340i. Even, you know, I mean, I really like the 330 as well. I mean, that's still pretty sporty if you don't have to have the 6-cylinder. I really enjoy just the regular 330. Is a really good vehicle. And those are, like, the one I reviewed just a couple of months ago was like 30 grand. So you're paying basically a 10 grand premium for this extra performance here, even on the used market. So, you know, beware of that. I mean, obviously it's going to go down to mileage and stuff. I think that 330 I reviewed was a little higher mileage, but still, you know, it just is worth noting that, you know, there is a significant price premium to go for the M340i. And if you are looking for value in this segment, I'd say the Genesis G70 is still your best bet. You can get one of those with the twin turbo V6 that has pretty similar amounts of power, not quite as punchy and not quite as fast, because it's not hooked up to as quick of a 8-speed automatic as this is, with that just using the regular Hyundai Genesis kind of you know, transmission. But you know, those on paper are pretty close, pretty comparable, and you can get one of those with the same miles and stuff for like high 20s. You know, so big savings, over 40 grand for this. And, you know, with some mods and stuff, I'm sure you could make it, you know, close to being as dynamic as this is, you know, as far as, I mean, I'd say even with those the way they are from the factory, they handle really well. They're very lively, just like this. You get a little bit more space here in the 3 Series, but it's pretty comparable, and I think the G70 is still very underrated. It's a fantastic car, and, you know, again, you get a lot of the same stuff here for basically, you know, 10 grand or more savings. And so I think the G70 is still my favorite if you are, you know, looking for a value. And also I have to add that, you know, a lot of the other competitors are still about 5 grand or so cheaper than this, comparably equipped, comparable miles, all of that. So when you look at like a, you know, 2020 Audi S4, those are about $5,000 less. Same thing goes for a C43. Even an Infiniti Q50 Red Sport is about 5 grand less than this. Now with that, I would expect more of a bigger discount, but strangely, those are actually holding the value pretty well. I think the Q50 is an easy one to knock off the list if you're looking for something that has, you know, the nicest interior and stuff. The interior's not going to be as nice as the Infiniti as it is in, you know, all the German competitors, and even the Genesis for that matter. But, you know, I really like the S4. The S4 is fantastic as well. Gives you a smoother ride, but less drama. You know, you get some nice induction note and stuff, but you don't get the exhaust. This is the only one that actually has any kind of real exhaust sound, honestly. And so, you know, again, from an enthusiast standpoint, I can see why this is the clear winner if you have the extra 5 to 10 grand to spend over the competitors there. But, you know, it's just worth noting that you can get some savings elsewhere. And with all of those, by the way, you also get a smoother ride. Even the G70, I'd say, gives you a slightly smoother ride than when you get here in this. And so that's really what it's going to come down to, I think, is just, are you able to spend the price premium to get the exhaust, to get, you know, this awesome engine and all that? If you are, you know, if you got the extra money to spend, by all means, I can understand why this is the top price one in the segment and why this is the most desirable, because it certainly feels like it. You know, it earns that title, I think, for sure, now that I've finally driven it after all these years of wanting to drive one of these, finally getting a chance to drive it. it is, I think, worthy of the hype. But like I said, and like many others have said as well, just, you know, try one of these out on your own roads to see if the suspension is a little too stiff for a sports sedan for you. Outside of that, fantastic, phenomenal car here, and yeah, have a lot to like here about the M340i. But anyway, that's all of my thoughts here on it. Let me know your thoughts on it in the comments below. Huge thanks once again to Harrison Auto Sales and Service for providing me here with this vehicle to review for you guys today. Thank you all very much for watching, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Take care.